We will now continue to the second part of our theme, from unleashing the church to transforming the community. As members are unleashed from the church building to view their work as an act of worship, we expect to see changes in the community as well, which we will talk about in this section. St. Francis of Assisi said, "Preach the gospel constantly. When necessary, use words." This is a remarkable statement, as it turns upside down most of what we understand in evangelism. This statement reminds us that what we do is important, and often it is more important than what we say. We forget that we can bear witness to Christ at all times through the work of our hands, and not just when we are talking about him. The way we are, the way we conduct business, from Monday through Saturday in the marketplace, can bear more witness than a few words from an evangelism committee. It was Gandhi who said, "I like your Christ, I don't like your Christians." The way that we behave from Monday through Saturday matters. How are we discipling people to preach constantly in their workplace? One of the transformational movements seeking to unite the global church in efforts to impact the world is the Lausanne movement. In the 1970s, Billy Graham perceived the need for a global congress to reframe Christian mission in a world of political, economic, intellectual, and religious upheaval. The church, he believed, had to grasp the ideas and values behind rapid changes in society, and the Lausanne movement was born July 1975. In 2004, when the Business as Mission movement began to gain some momentum and garner some attention, the Lausanne Commission wrote a statement about Business as Mission and made 2 recommendations regarding the Business as Mission movement. Those 2 recommendations are as follows. First, we call upon the church worldwide to identify, affirm, pray for, commission, and release business people and entrepreneurs to exercise their gifts and calling as business people in the world, among all peoples and to the ends of the earth. The second recommendation says, we call upon business people globally to receive this affirmation and to consider how their gifts and experience might be used to help meet the world's most pressing spiritual and physical needs through business as mission. The key thing to note is that the first recommendation, and in many ways the first step, is for the church to affirm and recognize business people. Once the church has done this, it is up to the business people to receive the affirmation. Ironically, however, most of the Business as Mission movement has bypassed the church, stating that it is too bureaucratic or too difficult. There are 1,200 nonprofit organizations in the U.S. alone that focus on faith and work, and almost none engage the church. The result of this is a lack of long-lasting transformation due to a lack of discipleship. The commitment of discipling marketplace leaders is to embrace fully the recommendation of the Lausanne Commission, to ask the church to take the first step, and then ask the business people to respond. The way we ask business people to respond, which then leads to community transformation, is through what we call the quadruple bottom line. Most businesses operate with one bottom line, economic or making a profit. Many more businesses today are adding 2 other bottom lines, a social bottom line in which they try to give back to the community. You may have heard of this referred to as CSR, or corporate social responsibility. The other bottom line that is becoming more and more of a requirement for businesses who operate in a global market is an environmental bottom line, in which care needs to be shown through the way the business operates and runs. However, at DML, we look at these bottom lines in a bit of a different way. The economic and environmental bottom line tie in very directly with the great commitment that we are given in Genesis chapter 1, to be fruitful and multiply the earth's resources, to help people flourish, while at the same time governing over the world in a way that protects it. The social bottom line lines up with a great commandment in which we are called to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. And then we add a fourth bottom line, a spiritual bottom line which lines up with the Great Commission, as we look at being a disciple in the workplace as well as making disciples. If Christian business people in the marketplace began to operate with a quadruple bottom line, we believe that it will lead to community transformation. Henry Blackaby, who wrote the book Experiencing God, as well as the book Experiencing God in Business, says this: "The marketplace is the last mission frontier. Christianity in the marketplace is salt and light in a dark world. There are not many unreached people groups left. Yet there is a huge unreached people group right in our cities and towns and in our workplaces. Our church members see and interact with these people every day in ways that you, as a pastor or church leader, are often not able to do. Helping them know and understand how to be salt and light, how to be transformational in the community is essential. This will not happen organically. The world will push against it. We must be intentional, and we must be discipling people to this purpose, with ongoing support and encouragement. Otherwise, very quickly, the world will push back for business to be done as usual, rather than business as mission." Another way to understand how the community might be transformed is to look at it from a systems theory approach. We are to be salt and light in all of our interconnecting systems. Systems theory says the world is made up of definable systems, one embedded in another, just like the nesting dolls shown here. The ability to understand, improve, and change these systems is built on understanding how and why the parts of the system interact in the way they do. It is the synergy of the parts, and not the parts themselves, that form the basis for success. Therefore, we need to be discipled to purpose as an individual, which is what the first and smallest doll represents. And many churches do discipling of individuals very well. We also need to be discipled to the purpose of marriage and family, which is represented by the second smallest doll. Being discipled to marriage and family takes new skills than simply being an individual before Christ. Many churches are seeing this need and running marriage and family classes to help people better be discipled to those purposes. Individuals and families are also part of a church, which is represented by the third smallest doll. The way we behave at home is not the same as how we behave in the church. We learn how to be in a church setting and have an impact on that system, just as we allow the church system to have an impact on us. But it doesn't stop there. I, as an individual, as part of a family, as part of the church, are in a community, which is represented by the fourth doll from the right. This community system has impacts on me as it relates to culture and commerce, and I, in turn, have an impact on it. How to have an impact on a Christian takes a new set of skills and discipline. The community is part of a town or city, which is the fifth doll. The town or city is part of a county, which is represented by the sixth doll. The county is part of a nation, represented by the seventh doll, which is part of the world, which is shown in the eighth doll. Each system has an impact on the individual and vice versa. Knowing how to interact and act in each system is important for transformation to be able to take place. People, church members, need to be discipled to each purpose and each system. As we disciple people to purpose, to having a quadruple bottom line, being transformational in communities, and to learning how to function as the church in each system, we begin to see that the purpose for business changes. I have interviewed thousands of Christian business people across many countries, and the two most common answers that I receive for why people do business is 1, to put food on the table, and 2, to keep busy. Neither of these reasons reflect the heart of God or the true purpose of business. What we want for Christian people in the marketplace is to have a paradigm shift for why they do business and how they can preach the gospel constantly, as St. Francis of Assisi said, through their actions. Rather than doing business to put food on the table and to stay busy, we prefer the following reason. The purpose of business from God's perspective is to create goods and services that will allow individuals and communities to flourish, and to provide jobs that will allow the creative image of God to come out in each employee. When we disciple to purpose, the purpose of business shifts, and individuals and communities begin to flourish. This paradigm shift is hugely important. It completely turns upside down the reason that most people exist in the business world. It puts the emphasis on the customer by desiring them to flourish, and on the employee by helping them achieve their calling. It puts the purpose for business on a higher playing field than simply to make profit and stay busy. At this time, many business people are wondering, where does profit fit in? Let me illustrate this with a word picture. I need to eat to live, right? If I don't eat, I will eventually die. But what happens if I live to eat? If all day, every day, I only think about putting food in my mouth, then I go to sleep and do it again the next day. I will become obese, will contribute nothing to the world, and my body will eventually begin to shut down. It is the same for profit. A business must have a profit to stay open, but it should not exist only for the profit. When that happens, just like when someone eats to live, profit becomes the end, rather than the means to the end, which should be to help people to flourish. If profit is the end or the goal of my business, how I get it doesn't matter, as long as I get it. But when profit is the means to the end, that means how I get it does matter. I must get it in a way that will help individuals and communities to flourish, as well as being a good employer. How can such a transformation take place? How can we help people with this paradigm shift? What can it look like practically in the marketplace? We think that it starts by seeing our work as our spiritual act of worship. Let's watch the following video together from Right Now Media.
Work. Most of us spend over half our lives at work. Whatever it is you fill the 9 to 5 with, planting crops, building cars, taking care of patients, teaching students, or running a business, work is where most of life happens. For some, work is a drain. They dread Monday mornings, forcing themselves to struggle through because they need the paycheck, while many times feeling trapped and beaten down by their job. Some people love their work. They're good at what they do. It energizes them. It's a place of security, a place to chase dreams, desires, and success. At work, they find fulfillment. We often forget to connect our faith to our work. We don't consider the reasons God may have us at our job. We don't think about the purpose and meaning we could bring to our work. We simply focus on how it makes us feel. But what if we saw our work as an opportunity to worship? As Christians, we are called to serve Christ with our lives. For a few, that means working as a pastor, a youth minister, or a missionary. Others serve the church by teaching children or singing in the choir. But when Sunday is over, most of us return to our jobs outside the church. For us, our mission is in the marketplace. We may not be the kind of missionary who moves to the far regions of Africa, but around the conference table, around the water cooler, or around the cubicle, we have an opportunity to worship the God who created us. He gave us skill. He gave us passion. He gave us work. When we do our jobs with excellence and integrity and diligence, it's an act of worship. We are displaying God's craftsmanship to the non-believing world around us. We are earning the right to be heard. We don't see a divide between Sunday and Monday, between the sacred and the secular. We've been invited into parts of the world that a pastor or traditional missionary will never see. We have conversations with people who would never set foot in a church. Whether we love or dread our work, we choose to turn the focus away from ourselves and toward the mission God has for us. Church is not the only place we worship, and Sundays are not the only days on our calendars that have meaning. Every day on mission for God brings us great joy. Like the heroes before us, we can be modern-day Noahs and Josephs and Peters who are called with a purpose. God has designed us. He created us to work and to worship. For us, work is worship.
How amazing would it be if we all saw our work as our spiritual act of worship? We invite you now to continue on to DML Intro Part 3, where Dr. Walker will continue our discussion on changing the world.